Is it possible to balance the budget while lifting caps on defense spending? And how should Congress be helping the persecuted Christians of the Middle East? Congresswoman Diane Black, a member of the House Budget Committee, joins us. And later, the Benedictines of Mary have done it again. Another #1 release on the Billboard classical charts with Easter at Ephesus. What's their secret? Their producer, Monica Fitzgibbons of De Montfort Music, will tell us. And finally, defending religious freedom in the U.S. and abroad. In an exclusive interview, Pastor Rick Warren and Tom Farr of Georgetown University say religious freedom is more than freedom to worship. The World Over Live begins right now.
Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. Congresswoman Diane Black, the secret of the phenomenal success of recording artists, the Benedictine Sisters of Mary, and Rick Warren and Tom Farr are all straight ahead. If you'd like to comment on tonight's show, send me a tweet. I'm at Raymond Arroyo, or drop me an email. I'm at worldover@EWTN.com. We've got a lot to get to. Here's the brief. News from the world over this week. More trouble in U.S.-Israeli relations. The Obama administration is alleging that Israel spied on closed-door nuclear talks among the U.S., Iran, and other world powers. Current and former senior Obama administration officials told the Wall Street Journal that Israel had penetrated the sensitive talks and used the information to build a case against an emerging agreement. Israel denied the charges on Tuesday, saying they gained their information by other means. Defense Minister Moshe Yaalon suggested that someone is attempting to create a dispute and a bad atmosphere between the U.S. and Israel. The Journal reported that the White House knew of the spying but didn't become upset until confidential details were given to Congress. The U.S. discovered the Israeli spy operation while spying on Israel. And public executions by the Islamic State continue in Mosul. On Tuesday, a man and woman were stoned to death on charges of adultery, according to the New York Times. Witnesses say hundreds of residents were gathered to view the executions. Later in the day, 3 young men were beheaded. They were the nephews of a political opponent of ISIS. Meanwhile, Canada is expanding its military mission against the Islamic State. Prime Minister Stephen Harper announced in Parliament on Tuesday that the Royal Canadian Air Force will begin airstrikes against ISIS positions in Syria. Its mission thus far had been limited to Iraq. The U.S. and Canada are the only NATO nations conducting bombing missions in Syria. They join 4 other Middle Eastern countries. In a related story, Saudi Arabia has begun airstrikes against Iran-backed Shiite rebels in Yemen for the first time. And the first major party candidate has announced his intention to run for the presidency of the United States. Getting in front of the pack, Republican Senator Ted Cruz made it official this week. The Canadian-born Texan took center stage at the Evangelical Liberty University on Monday.
It is a time for truth. It is a time for liberty. It is a time to reclaim the Constitution of the United States.
Cruz is among what is expected to be a crowded field of GOP candidates. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul is expected to officially launch his candidacy right after Easter on April 7th. Meanwhile, on the Democratic side, the draft Elizabeth Warren campaign has taken a new turn. On Sunday, the Boston Globe launched its coverage of the 2016 presidential race, devoting 3 pieces, all arguing for the Massachusetts senator to enter the fray. The editorial said it would be a mistake for Democrats to let Hillary Clinton coast to the presidential nomination without real opposition. Warren has repeatedly said that she is not running. We shall see. And a half a millennium later, in England, the winter of his discontent has given way to a glorious spring remembrance and a final rest fit for a king. Thousands this week paid tribute to Richard III, the last Plantagenet king. In 1485, he was struck down in the Battle of Bosworth. The king was later buried without pomp and his remains lost after his tomb was destroyed during the Reformation. Richard's remains were finally unearthed during an archaeological excavation in 2012 under a Leicester parking lot, the site of a former 16th century friary. On Monday, Cardinal Vincent Nichols of Westminster celebrated a Requiem Mass for the Catholic king. On Thursday, Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, presided over the burial ceremony at the Church of England's Leicester Cathedral. And Pope Francis has come out against capital punishment no matter the crime. In prepared remarks given to an anti-death penalty group, Pope Francis said that the death penalty is an offense against the inviolability of life and the dignity of the human person, which contradicts God's plan for man and society. It does not render justice to the victims, but rather fosters vengeance." End quote. The Pope further argued, in opposition to St. Thomas Aquinas, that a convict sentenced to death is denied the possibility to repent or make amends, and thus denied an encounter with God's merciful and healing justice. The Holy Father also spoke out against life sentences, since they, quote, deprive detainees not only of their freedom, but also of hope. He characterized life sentences as, quote, a sort of covert death penalty. And the brewing controversy over the appointment of a Chilean bishop accused of a sex abuse cover-up exploded in an angry protest on Saturday. Thousands of faithful dressed in black gathered outside the Osorno Cathedral as others inside attempted to stop the ordination of Bishop Juan Barros. Riot police were called in to protect the bishop, and the Mass was cut short after 30 minutes. Bishop Barros has been accused by at least 3 victims. They claim he was present when they were molested by a Father Fernando Cardima in the 80s and 90s. One of the accusers, Juan Carlos Cruz, a journalist, said he holds the Pope responsible. He told the Associated Press that victims never expected a slap in the face from the Pope. Critics suggest that this is a violation of Pope Francis's zero-tolerance pledge of abuse by priests. More than 1,000 lay faithful and 30 priests from the diocese had petitioned Pope Francis to rescind the appointment. The Vatican investigated and found Father Cardima guilty of sex abuse in 2011. Bishop Barros denies any knowledge of the sexual abuse. And finally, the purported miraculous liquefying blood of a relic in the presence of Pope Francis has stirred some debate. Some insist it's the first time that it's ever happened in the presence of a pope. Others argue it was all staged. In Naples this past Saturday, Pope Francis venerated the relic, 2 vials of the coagulated blood of Saint Gennaro. The blood half liquefied, according to Cardinal Crescencio Pepe, the Archbishop of Naples. He declared it a sign that the patron saint of Naples loves Pope Francis. The Pope appeared to downplay the implied miracle, quipping, "It means the saint loves us halfway." The relic of the 4th century saint is said to miraculously liquefy only 3 times a year. Now, some have mused that this liquefaction was choreographed. Cardinal Pepe can be clearly seen on video shaking the vials of the relic before handing it to Pope Francis, raising speculation that nothing miraculous caused St. Gennaro's blood to liquefy. Climate changes have been credited with causing the blood's liquefaction in the past.